I'm here now. Okay.
Good to have you.
Oh,
So, where we left off last time, George, was the bullet travels through the atmosphere in a straight line.
oh, you want to go down this path again?
Yeah, that's why you're here.
So, the bullet travels through the atmosphere in a straight line, correct?
Goes through the atmosphere, yes, in a straight line if you shoot a bullet.
Right. Well, the atmosphere, George, is attached to the Earth, according to you. Therefore, there's no Coriolis effect.
No, that's not the conclusion you draw from that, because the bullet is not carried with the atmosphere. It goes through the atmosphere in a straight line. The atmosphere is rotating along with the Earth. Two reference frames.
No, that's one reference frame. So if the bullet travels through the atmosphere in a straight line and the atmosphere is attached to the rotating reference frame, that's one reference frame, George.
No, the atmosphere attached to the rotating Earth is one reference frame.
Yes, and the bullet travels through that in a straight line. So if you're rotating and the bullet's rotating with you in the atmosphere, then you've got one reference frame and no Coriolis effect, George.
No, the bullet is not rotating with you. Oh, God. Why do we
Hold on, it's not rotating. So the atmosphere is not attached.
No, the atmosphere is rotating with the Earth. The bullet.
So if it's rotating with the Earth and the bullet's travelling in a straight line, then there's only one reference frame and no Coriolis effect.
That should make the game of golf really interesting.
That's not what I'm saying, Nathan. The bullet is going through the atmosphere. The bullet is detached from the atmosphere.
No, it's going through the atmosphere. Don't double speak me, senile old bastard. It's not simultaneously separate from the atmosphere and travelling through it, George. Let's get it straight. It's travelling through the atmosphere in a straight line. If the Earth is rotating with the atmosphere, you only have one reference frame. In the same way, George, stop rumpusing me. Stop rumpusing me. Stop rumpusing me. Stop rumpusing me. I haven't finished. Shut your mouth. Shut your mouth. Shut your mouth, rumpus. So, in the same way, if the roundabout...
Rumpus isn't here.
Stop rumpusing the hangout, George. George, is it because you're cornered? Is it because you're cornered, George?
No, I'm not cornered.
Shut up then. Shut up then. Shut your stupid mouth till I finish my sentence. Shut up. Shut up. I haven't finished, George. Shut up. So, in the same way, if the roundabout had the atmosphere attached to it, it would also be one reference frame. But when you demonstrate Coriolis with a roundabout, obviously the roundabout isn't carrying the atmosphere with it. Because if it was, you'd only have one reference frame. This is why I've got a mute button. So that when Wanker Boy here, senile bastard that he is, thinks he'll ruin the end of my point, I can shut him up. Right, George, I'll say it again because you tried to rumpus my point. If the roundabout was the same as the Earth, in your example with the atmosphere attached, the roundabout would have the atmosphere attached. One reference frame. That won't work with your Coriolis effect though, will it, George? Because if the bullet travels in a straight line through the atmosphere, then you only have one reference frame if the atmosphere is attached to the Earth.
My turn to speak now, is it?
Well, you can acknowledge what I'm saying. Are you going to acknowledge that if the atmosphere is...
You're interrupting me.
You asked the question. Is it your turn to talk? You asked me a question. Is it your turn to talk? It's your turn to acknowledge that if the atmosphere is attached, you only have one reference frame.
No. You have one reference frame if the Earth is attached to the rotating object like the Earth or the roundabout, and the bullet travels.
No, we're not talking about roundabouts being attached to the Earth. We've got a very simple example. The bullet goes through the atmosphere in a straight line, and according to you, the atmosphere is attached to the Earth. One reference frame, George. That's what you're giving us as an example.
Earth is attached to the Earth. One reference frame. Bullet.
Yes, so if we've only got one reference frame, George, we don't have a Coriolis effect.
You do, because...
Right. No, George. Just because you assert it doesn't make it so. If you've only got one reference frame, you don't have a Coriolis effect.
No, I never said, there's 2 reference frames.
No, there isn't. If the Earth and the atmosphere are attached, then it's the same as the roundabout having the atmosphere attached. It doesn't, to give you 2 reference frames, you have the atmosphere and the Earth rotating underneath it separately. That's what Coriolis is. It's defined in plenty of places. Now, you find me a reference that says the Earth is attached to the atmosphere.
The Earth is attached to the atmosphere?
Don't assert it. Find me a reference for it. Bring it up on screen right now and let's pick it apart, George. Don't just assert your religious belief here. I'm sick of hearing it. We've absolutely demolished it, so bring a citation to the table.
A citation.
Don't start yapping, just respond.
To the atmosphere. I mean, this is very well known. It's obvious.
Are you dumb, deaf, or just stupid? Don't tell me it's well known. Go and get a citation for it so we can rip it a new one.
Well, you're telling us it's well known that the Earth is flat. So show me a citation.
That's not the accepted rhetoric, though, is it? No. The accepted rhetoric here, George, the accepted standard is that the Earth is a sphere. We're ripping that a new one by pointing out the logical fallacies that are attached to it. One of which is that you can't have Coriolis simultaneously with the Earth and the atmosphere as separate reference frames, because then planes would take different durations. And obfuscators like you come here to convince people that they're only one reference frame, but you still have Coriolis. And that's bollocks.
No, it's not bollocks.
Yeah, it is bollocks. You can't have one reference frame, the Earth and the atmosphere attached, and have Coriolis. That doesn't jive. You must have 2 reference frames. In order to have Coriolis, you must have the atmosphere separate from the rotating Earth underneath. And if you have...
No, you don't. No, the atmosphere is not separate of the rotating Earth.
Well, then you've only got 1 reference frame, so you don't have Coriolis effect.
No, there's 2 reference frames.
No, if the Earth and the atmosphere are attached, that is 1 reference frame. In the same way, the roundabout would have to have the atmosphere travelling with the roundabout. It isn't, and they use a roundabout as an example because obviously the atmosphere is not travelling with the roundabout. And in order for a Coriolis effect to take place on Earth, you must also have the Earth travelling underneath the atmosphere. That is what defines the Coriolis effect. So if you haven't got the Earth and the atmosphere separate, then you haven't got a Coriolis effect.
No, the Coriolis on Earth would work whether or not the atmosphere was present. If we had a vacuum... and
we haven't got a vacuum. This is a straw man. I couldn't give a shit what you assert about a vacuum. We are not living in a vacuum.
Of course we're not, but I'm saying it doesn't matter whether the atmosphere is present or if it was not present.
It is present, so this is a straw man. You're just going to reassert your straw man. What a wanker. So whether or not the presence of atmosphere is in this equation is irrelevant, because we definitely do have atmosphere. The atmosphere that your bullet travels through in a straight line attached to the rotating reference frame, according to you, George, negating Coriolis.
No, I did not say that. The bullet is in ballistic flight. It is not attached to the rotating atmosphere.
It's in ballistic flight through the atmosphere.
It's independent. It's in a reference frame
through
separate
the atmosphere. Through the atmosphere. We've gone through this 100 times. It doesn't create its own reference frame. It's travelling through the atmosphere. And according to you, it's travelling through
the atmosphere.
Yeah, that's right. Through the atmosphere in a straight line. Now, if that atmosphere is attached to the rotating reference frame, then you don't have Coriolis. I've said it about 100 times, George. You've been demolished.
No, it's not demolished. You just have a misunderstanding. A bullet going through the atmosphere.
Don't assert it. I'll just shut you up every single time you do it. I don't misunderstand. 2 reference frames, roundabout and atmosphere, or Earth and atmosphere. If you're going to assert that the atmosphere and Earth system are attached and rumpus me every time I get to this point, this is why I have a mute button. Because you're going to rumpus me every time I make the devastating point. That being that if the roundabout was not showing any Coriolis, the atmosphere would be rotating with the roundabout. They use a roundabout because obviously the air you throw the ball into, which is in ballistic flight, according to your definition, then you will have Coriolis, because the atmosphere is separate from the rotating reference frame. And in your bullshit world of spheres, the atmosphere is separate from the rotating reference frame of the Earth. That's what causes Coriolis. The problem being that flights...
I never said that.
Every
You're the
time.
one that's saying that.
I don't care what you say. Shut up. Your assertion is meaningless. To have a Coriolis effect, you have the atmosphere separate from the rotating Earth underneath. The problem being that that would necessitate plane journeys being radically different in east to west and west to east flights.
Nathan, let me just say what he's just said in the back chat, in the background. He said the atmosphere and the Earth are the same reference frame. You want to address that?
That's correct.
Double speak.
So they are the same reference frame, George. The Earth rotating and the atmosphere
it's
attached.
The magic word again, R.
Atmosphere and the surface of the Earth are rotating together. They can be thought of as being the same reference frame.
So therefore, it's analogous to the roundabout with the atmosphere travelling along with the roundabout. So if you've got a roundabout with the air travelling with the roundabout in the same reference frame, when you release the ball, there's no deflection because you've only got one reference frame, George. The ball in the example...
That's not true. There is a Coriolis deflection when you throw the ball because of the fact that the ball is going in a straight line in ballistic flight and the Earth and the atmosphere are rotating.
Not the Earth, we're talking about a roundabout. You're trying to double speak us again, George. So let's keep it simple. We're talking about a roundabout. Simple, roundabout. When you release the ball from the roundabout in the example on Wikipedia, the reason the ball takes a deflection is because it goes into the second reference frame, George. The atmosphere.
No, the ball doesn't.
No, so you're saying Wiki's wrong. Better get in touch with Wiki then, you senile old bastard. Let's see how fast they change that definition. Because the definition of Coriolis is simple. Two reference frames, atmosphere and roundabout, analogous to Earth and atmosphere. It's the same, George. To have a Coriolis, you've got to have a rotating frame, the Earth, and the atmosphere, a non-rotating frame. And when you scale that down to a roundabout, it remains the same. The atmosphere doesn't suddenly start travelling with the roundabout and the ball becomes in ballistic flight, generating its own reference frame. That's not the definition, George. That's just some shit you've made
up. The ball will experience Coriolis effect on the rotating roundabout, whether or not the atmosphere is there. The atmosphere doesn't matter.
No, the atmosphere is there in the example. That's the second reference frame in the Wikipedia example, George.
Read further into the Wikipedia article. Go down in there where they talk about the Earth being the same as the roundabout.
Go on then. Bring it up. Let's have a look.
I don't have the page up.
Oh, what a shock.
Look it up.
Well, let's just assert that you're a senile old bastard and you haven't got the slightest clue what you're talking about, because in the Wikipedia example, it makes it very clear. You've got a rotating frame and a non-rotating frame. The roundabout and the atmosphere. It's very clear. It's very simple. One rotates, and when you release the ball, what you count as projectile in ballistic flight, it travels in the frame of reference that's not rotating. The atmosphere. That's the same on Earth, according to your bullshit ball. You want to obfuscate this point indefinitely and claim that they're attached. They're not. In your bullshit ball world, they're separate. It's just a big problem for flight.
You're the only one that's saying that they're not attached.
You're saying they are attached.
No, on the Coriolis.
Yes, I am. Yes, the atmosphere and the surface of the Earth are attached. The atmosphere in general is rotating with the surface of the Earth. That's generally accepted.
Well, if that's generally accepted, then there's no Coriolis effect, George, because the definition of Coriolis doesn't give you a reference frame based on the ball being thrown. It's based on the actual frame of reference that it's going into, i.e. the atmosphere.
No, do you know what a frame of reference is? It's a coordinate system that one attaches to an object that might be moving or stationary. And in general, you have as many reference frames as you have moving independent objects.
That's interesting, George. So in the case of a ball and a roundabout, The ball's rotating when it's on the roundabout, and then when it's thrown into its second reference frame, the atmosphere, it travels in a straight line while you continue to rotate underneath. That is, by definition, the Coriolis effect.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Go ahead,
ask.
If I put a spin on the ball while I'm in the roundabout, does that change the trajectory at all?
It will change if it's in contact with the roundabout, but it will not in general change. Okay, you have to differentiate it. You can have, if you put a spin on the ball, there will be a slight effect of the atmosphere on the ball. But in general, those effects are negligible when you consider the motion of the ball as a whole. Forget about the...
What are you talking about, man?
That's not true.
What are you going on about?
Does George have his own
Well,
model?
what he's talking about is if you put a spin on a ball, like, say, a baseball player...
Football.
So,
football and a football
ball, by having the surface of the ball spin, you can have a little bit of interaction with the atmosphere, but that's a subtle effect.
No, it's not subtle, George. You're wrong. That's called the Magnus effect.
Yeah, the Magnus effect is real, but in general,
Well, if you're going to call that negligible and we can see the curve, then how are you going to argue refraction?
Okay, so what's the point? You can give it a Magnus effect. Big deal.
Because it's interacting with the atmosphere, because it's travelling through it, you complete bonehead. Something you say it's devoid of, you complete idiot. It completely shits on your argument, George. Try and pay attention. I know you're getting on in age. Try and keep up with the argument, George. This destroys your position. Yeah? Because balls have got various effects, and they're based on the fact that they travel through the atmosphere. They don't create their own bloody reference frame. The atmosphere interacts with them. In the case of bullets, it's travelling through the atmosphere. The second reference frame that you claim is one.
When you have systems with many objects in
why are you
different
the authority on this?
Each one of them has
Why
a
are you
reference
pretending
frame
to be the authority on this, George? Why are you pretending to be the authority? Why should we take your word for this?
Try and get something, George, a factual position.
Why are you asserting that you're the authority here?
Well, I'll tell you what, go to that book that Quantum Eraser keeps talking about.
You're not answering my question. Are you deaf, old man? I asked why you are asserting that you are the authority on this subject.
I'm not saying I'm the authority.
Good, you're not, because you're wrong. The Coriolis effect on Earth takes place because the Earth and the atmosphere are separate from each other. That is what causes it. So you can accept that you're not the authority here, George. I'm going to tell you that I am the authority because I understand this and you don't, because you're a senile old bastard and you don't understand what Coriolis is. I'll tell you, George, because you're not the authority here. You don't understand it. So take it from someone who does understand. The reason you have Coriolis is because the Earth and the atmosphere are separate reference frames, George. They're not attached to each other. You're just a bonehead.
No, not at all.
Well, the hand wave dismissal won't work. You're not an authority here, George. You're a senile old bastard who's being told what's what by me. The Earth and the atmosphere in your bullshit sphere world are separate. They are not attached.
Okay, well, let's take this from...
No, don't talk into your mic so loud. Just because you're being shit all over doesn't mean you have to eat your microphone.
Okay. Are you claiming then that the Earth is not rotating?
Absolutely, without question.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, all right.